Trade Commission Act receives its second and third reading in the House of Assembly. All this and so much more when 284 News returns.
There's a reason you get up on a morning. A reason you pick yourself up, start the day. Maybe it's sheer grit. Maybe it's your ethics. Maybe it's because you know people like you are waiting for people just like you. We all have our reasons, and for Republic Bank, that reason is you. Every little thing, every big thing. It's all about making a difference in your life. Because after 182 years, if it's one thing we're sure about, is that the difference is you. We're here to help.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Welcome, viewers. It is Monday, June 8th, 2020. I am Kyla Kenisha Forbes.
And my name is Javon Wilson. Thank you so much for sitting with us once again for another great edition of 284 News. Now, Kyla, back from a really lovely weekend.
Yeah.
How was your weekend?
My weekend was good, restful. Yeah.
All right. Well, I was out and about, indulging in some of the beautiful BVI blue waters. So overall, it was a great weekend. But viewers, strict business to get into right now. Now, beginning our newscast today, the Minister of Labor and Natural Resources and representative for the 9th District, Honorable Vincent Wheatley, has pledged a massive $20,000 towards the installation of CCTV cameras, across the island of Virgin Gorda in light of the recent rise in crime. The minister said, quote, "We want to make this message very loud and clear that the Virgin Islands community condemns the state of crimes that have been taking place over the last 3 months. It is not something we are prepared to tolerate. If persons need help, and if you are listening now and you are one of those persons, we are willing to help you. But we will not sit idly by and let the reputation of our beautiful island be tarnished as a place where it is not safe for anyone anymore. Our tourism product depends on Virgin Gorda having an untarnished reputation," he further stated. Now, Police Commissioner Mr. Michael Matthews said this will lend greatly to the cause of security and further stated that more than 150 CCTV cameras will be installed territory-wide in short order. The commissioner said, quote, "At this time, we are just about to roll out the reinstallation of CCTV across the BVI, but there are 178 cameras due to go out, which will include Virgin Gorda. We also have had orders from the business community in Virgin Gorda to assist in the procurement of more cameras, and we welcome that, and we are working very hard with the technicians," end of quote. Now, the top cop also revealed that his long-term plan is to increase the police presence on the island of Virgin Gorda. He said police officers are currently being rotated and encouraged residents on the island to help the officers to transition smoothly. He said, quote, "As we start to put new faces into that island, just remember that the guys and girls that come over won't know the community straight away, won't know how it works on Virgin Gorda. We need your help," said Mr. Michael Matthews. Now, Kyla, I know over the last few months, about 3 months or so, we've recorded a formidable increase in crimes as it relates to specifically the island of Virgin Gorda. CCT, another telecommunications company, there was Leverick Bay as well, Leverick Bay Resort, and just recently Joy Mini Mart and Speedy's as well. They were both broken into just recently, but it's a frightening reality because, like the minister said, Virgin Gorda happens to be the mecca of the BVI's tourism product, and this type of activity could really leave a negative imprint, if we must say, on the island of Virgin Gorda. So I'm really happy to see the minister, the police force as well, but collectively, even the residents, because just recently on Facebook we saw one of the residents trying to organize a meeting regarding policing and security because they feel like they really need to take the matter into their own hands and address the issue of these robberies and burglaries we've been recording in Virgin Gorda. So kudos to everybody who's involved because again, it cannot continue like this.
Most definitely. As you said, being Virgin Gorda having such a tourism product, but just in general, with all that people are going through right now, the community, the entire BVI community, this is something that must be stopped, and we must just extend, as you said, kudos to the police, the minister, for just taking this step to kind of try to curb that that problem over in Virgin Gorda. We do hope that this would help.
Definitely, and it will require a holistic effort, a community effort. You know, we always look to the police force, and yes, they have a role to play, but you know, they need leads. You know, a lot of persons really hold back because I think our community is so small and tightly knitted. Sometimes we hold back on imperative information that is needed to solve a lot of these crimes, and it will require a holistic effort. So I'm hoping that persons can collectively, we can work together to curb this issue.
Most definitely. Now, viewers, last Friday, the motion was moved in the House of Assembly for the second and the third reading of the Virgin Islands Trade Commissions Act 2019. Now, during the 8th sitting of the second session of the 4th House of Assembly, the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew A. Fahie, lists the proposed functions of this trade commission. Let's take a watch.
Mr. Speaker, the Trade Commission is the principal body in the Virgin Islands responsible for promoting business, trade, investment, and consumer affairs. The functions include, but are not limited to, advising the Minister on all matters related to trade, investment, consumer affairs, and implementing mechanisms to the development of these initiatives locally and internationally. Reviewing the economic performance of sectors, identifying issues, and recommending the improvements in the existing policy legislative framework, promoting fair trade practices among the business community, which includes both suppliers and consumers, identifying markets for foreign investment and opportunities to diversify BVI's current portfolio for economic development, receiving, evaluating, and determining the approval or rejection of business licenses based on the current economic landscape.
There we saw the Premier just listing an extensive list of functions for that trade commission, but also in the House of Assembly, Honorable Fahie, he went on to further say that the Trade Commission will have its own board comprising of no more than 7 members that will be appointed by Cabinet. These members will cover a cross-section of expertise. He said some of the board members may include a trade commissioner ex officio, as well as representatives from the legal, environmental, social, educational, the business and trade association, and the private business sector. The board should meet at least once a month, and the board should not be in office for a period exceeding 3 years. Now, Premier Fahie said there is a potential opportunity for increased economic activities through the services of the Trades Commission. Now, Javon, here we see the Department of Trade and Investment Promotions potentially being converted into a statutory body. This Trade Commission, as a statutory body, will be bound by the Constitution to pay all funds collected for and on behalf of the government into the Consolidated Fund. This Trade Commission will also have the responsibility of handling any complaints placed under the Consumer Protection Act. Now, Premier Fahie said that the Consumer Protection Act is one of the interconnected legislations to this body, and the Commission will be responsible to giving teeth, I quote, to the Consumer Protection Act when it becomes law. The Honorable Carvin Malone, Deputy Premier and Minister of Health and Social Development, seconded the motion for the bill to be read for the second and the third time in the House. Then we have Honorable Marlon A. Penn, Leader of the Opposition. He voiced his full support for this bill. Let's take a look at that clip.
Speaker, the Premier did a very good job outlining the objects and reasons of the bill. As we know, the bill is the Trade Department is going to be subsumed into this commission. It will also have responsibility for the Investment Promotion Agency, as well as the Consumer Protection Act. an act that we've been well talked about throughout the territory, piece of legislation that is long in coming, and I believe that it's also on the other paper and will be subsequently passed after this piece of legislation. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a labor of love for a lot of individuals. I know a lot of work went in to ensure that the Trade Commission was established, to ensure that the subsequent suite of legislation was established, because it's important for us, especially now during the COVID-19 era, and especially after Hurricanes Irma and Maria, to put the infrastructure in place, put the institutions in place to ensure that we drive commerce in the territory, to ensure we put things in place to protect our consumers, to protect our businesses. And one of the key aspects is to ensure fair trade and fair practices in the territory. One of the challenges that we're having a lot in this territory is unfair trade practices.
So, Javon, there we saw Honorable Marlon Penn just basically voicing his full support for the bill, and he gave his reasons why. And really and truly, Javon, the Consumer Protection Act is something that we've basically been hearing about for quite some time now, and the people of the Virgin Islands are fully in support of this bill. But here, what we see with the Trade Commission is now a body to really put this act into effect.
And it's about time. I think it's about time. I'm really happy that the leader of the opposition is in full support, because it is about time that we put the necessary mechanisms in place, like you said, to drive commerce in the BVI. But additionally, we know for years we've complained about unfair trade practices in the BVI. So I definitely think, like the Premier said, this will complement the Consumer Protection Act. I know there are persons that are kind of on the fence as it relates to a board having to govern this new legislation. Persons are of the opinion that it should have gone through the Premier and the Premier's office, but that is another matter to chew on. But overall, I'm just really happy that we're putting the infrastructure in place that will alleviate some of the concerns we've had over the years.
Most definitely.
All right, viewers, it's still ahead. The Premier is pleading with persons not to test the system, actually. You know, he constantly says it's for the needy and not for the greedy. So, of course, appealing to those persons who may not need to not try to exploit the system. That and so much more when 284 News returns.
Is business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media at cctvbi.com. Advertising with us works.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, on Friday, viewers, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Minister of Finance, and the representative for the 1st Electoral District, Honorable Andrew A. Fahie. Now, viewers, as we are aware, the Virgin Islands have allocated $10 million to assist the unemployed or the underemployed persons here in the BVI. Also, the BVI Electricity Corporation is offering amnesty, and this is all in an effort to assist persons affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Javon, persons have voiced their concerns regarding these initiatives being on a case-by-case basis. Persons are worried that there are no clear criteria which would qualify persons, and this may lead to a lack of transparency and accountability. Now, Javon, unfortunately, persons may slip through the cracks and receive benefits that they do not qualify for, or persons who are not in need may receive benefits simply based on who they know, and this is a valid concern. Now, hear what Premier Fahie had to say to the people of the Virgin Islands about this issue.
I would advise persons not to do that, because there are laws that will be used if you found out that you access these funds and you did not need them. Because when we put these programs in place, we put them in place knowing that we have to help those persons in need. That's not to say that persons will not test the system that's anywhere in the world. But remember, everyone is free to do what you want, but you're not free from the consequences. So I'll just like to advise persons and also advise them not to do that.
Here in that clip, we saw Honorable Fahie. He basically said there will be consequences for persons who try to test the system. He informed us that there are actually laws that are in place to combat such a situation. Now, Javon, I'm sure we have heard these just about persons, and we also heard of reports of this happening during the food initiative, when persons were taking advantage of the system simply, and this is really a concern of the people.
I completely agree with you, Kyla. It's especially frightening since we are working from such a specific reserve. We don't have a lot to go around. So once that is depleted, then what, you know? And what we saw over the lockdown, especially, is persons who didn't even need it. You know, persons who were still working and still making their monies and able to pay their bills and get their necessary essentials. They were still trying to accept, and unfortunately, it goes back to the system. The system that was in place was flawed in some sense because persons were getting in. So I in speaking to Minister Wheatley, that is Honorable Vincent Wheatley, recently he did say that a database will be established between all the entities because besides this $10 million, there is the social security aspect. The district representatives received $300,000 and $400,000 respectively at large. And also there are other entities like Family Support Network and so on. So persons might attempt to exploit from all of these various aspects. So what they're at least what the minister said they're trying to do is establish a database that will communicate all of that information to ensure that persons don't slip through.
I do hope, as you said, during the lockdown, we did see some flaws in the system, and I guess hopefully learning from those, just learning from the last time. But I think what Premier is basically saying, and he says in this next clip, he's just pleading to persons to really and truly to be fair. There are persons out there that really need the help. So let's hear what Premier Fahie had to say when he spoke to the heart of the people.
To speak to their heart. If you don't need the breaks that have been given or the aid that's been given or any grant, well, don't fill it out because there are persons, they're hurting, single mothers that need some help. You have persons who single fathers might need some help. You have even some youngsters who lost their parents and their older one is helping raise the others and they need the help. Why would you take away from them knowing that they need the help? And because of...
Yes, viewers, that is Honorable Fahie basically speaking to the people in hopes that people will be fair and everyone that is in need would get and the greedy will be considerate, I guess.
Definitely. But Kyla, just getting back to the criteria as well, there are more concerns about that. Just recently we saw radio host Mr. Claude Skelton-Klein really speaking out as it relates to the aspect of BVIEC. Again, the criteria being a big problem for a lot of people, not very clear. And even within the drop-down, the criteria itself, really cutting out a big chunk of people. For example, with the BVIEC, your bills must have been paid up to April. And if we can recall, we started feeling the economic impacts, the crippling impacts of COVID-19 prior to that. Our borders probably were already shut by that. The tourism industry came to a halt. Persons would have already been laid off or on reduced salaries. So it's kind of unfair. And what we're afraid of in this type of climate is again, like you said, the persons who need it may not qualify for it. And I mean, this is just BVIEC, but we see some of that energy trickling down to the other parts of the bailout as well.
Most definitely. But one thing the Premier did say during this interview was if anyone has any ideas, give him a call because I think they are open to suggestions. As we continuously say, this is something that is new to everyone.
And very fluid.
And we're just hoping for the best.
Definitely. Viewers, we have to move right along. The Financial Literacy Program at the BVI Financial Services Commission hosted a live e-forum insurance on Monday, the 1st of June via Facebook. and ZBVI Radio. Now, the coordinator and host of the event, Ms. Rhonda Hatch-Smith, said that the event is one of several hosted annually by the Money Matters BVI team with the aim of educating the public on financial protocols and encouraging residents to engage in both introspection and discussion with their providers about protocols offered that best suits their needs. Now, the e-forum scheduling took into account the onset of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season, of course, that began on June 1st, 2020, and other continuing threats. For example, the current pandemic that we're living in. Now, the panelists at the e-forum included Mr. Sean Mohammed, who is the managing director of NAJACO's general agent. We also had Ms. Jillian Plaxton. She is the commercial lines underwriter at Caribbean Insurance Limited. We had Ms. Irma Cricky, the managing director of Cricky's Insurance Agency Limited. Mr. Angel Brown, development underwriter at Colonial Insurance's BVI. Mrs. Mayana Privas, the supervisor at Alfonso Warner Insurance Agency. Ms. Berenice Stout Lewis, the managing director, the Insurance Store Limited. So a lot to go around. Now, during the forum, viewers, property owners were warned about the consequences of underinsuring. And I know this is a conversation we've been having here at 284 Media as it relates to insurance companies really coming forward. Kyla, at the forum, several areas regarding insurance coverage were discussed, including the need to keep financial and pictorial records, the availability of endorsements, including coverage for alternate accommodation while a damaged property is being repaired, and the value of comprehensive auto versus third-party insurance generally. However, the topic which brought out the most impassioned discussion was regarding underinsurance. Like we mentioned, insurers cited that underinsurance was an issue that had plagued the Virgin Islands for decades. They were disturbed by the fact that insured persons were willing to continue the practice of being underinsured and sign disclosures stating that they were cognizant and content that they were underinsured. Now, Mrs. Hodge-Smith stated, quote, "Obviously, the stance of the Money Matters BVI team and the Commission is that persons should seek to insure adequately based on recent replacement valuations to avoid having to personally foot the bill to rebuild their investments. Perhaps the potential impacts of not insuring adequately could be better understood if insured persons would read their policies as encouraged by the insurers. Persons were advised to read their policies thoroughly and ensure that the terms and conditions were fully understood. Money Matter BVI encourages those persons with an interest in life, home, business, and auto insurance to watch the event, which is also available via their Facebook page, that is Money Matters BVI. For additional information, you can also visit their website at moneymattersbvi.org, or you can call them on 852-4777. Now, Kyla, very timely and in-depth reminder for all residents across the territory as we are in the midst of hurricane season, but really trying to be I think precaution is better than cure is the phrase I'd like to use here, simply because we've seen the impacts of Hurricanes Irma and Maria, and we've seen how many losses were incurred as a result of, like they said, persons being uninsured or underinsured, or not insured at all. And I don't think that's an episode we want to relive.
Most definitely. But what I really like to highlight in this story is Money Matters is at it again.
Yes.
We see Money Matters basically hosting a string of financial literacy programs, because simply some persons just do not know. They need the information, and most so, kudos to these professionals that are coming out and giving this information to the general public. We've seen Money Matters do forums on loans, wills, all sorts of financial related content, and we definitely want to just force the BVI and encourage the BVI to be a financial literate community.
I fully agree with
definitely that. Kudos to all persons involved. Now, viewers, we have a few more stories for you, but we'll need to take a quick commercial break. So 284 News will be right back.
You want to top a boa?
You want top of power?
Top of power.
Join the prepaid party with CCT and enjoy more affordable data plans, more top-up promotions, more savings with hero bundles, and more value for your money each and every Tuesday with Top Up Turn Up Tuesday. Visit a CCT store today or anywhere CCT Top Up is sold and top up your phone.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You want top up power?
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. And now, voters took to the poll in their numbers on Friday for the St Kitts and Nevis federal elections. Now, by the end of the day, it was the Team Unity Coalition led by incumbent Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris who recorded a decisive victory over Dr. Denzel Douglas's St Kitts and Nevis Labour Party. Now, according to Harris, the electoral outcome is a clear indication that the policies and program introduced over the last 5 years had a positive impact on the lives of all citizens and residents. The Caribbean community, CARICOM, also sent out congratulations to Mr. Harris on the resounding victory. Chairman of CARICOM and Prime Minister of Barbados, Maya Motley, said, quote, "The overwhelming nature of the triumph at the polls indicates the scale of confidence that the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis have in the ability of the party to guide them to a secure and prosperous future." End of quote. She also congratulated the citizens of the Federation on the smooth and peaceful conduct of the poll in spite of the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, viewers, the results were a little bit different for Suriname, of course, nestled in South America, with the coalition opposition pulling in the win this time. Suriname's electoral authorities finally announced the May 25th elections won by opposition parties who are now accusing the government of Desi Bartese of obstructing efforts to seat a new legislator in the South African nation. The results, which in past years were announced almost immediately, were released Thursday night, that is last Thursday night, just an hour before the government imposed sweeping limits on public activity to fight a flare-up of COVID-19. Now, 4 opposition parties have formed a coalition to elect the next president in August, though they remain 1 vote short of the 34 needed for a 2/3 majority in the National Assembly, which is required to elect the president. The Reform Party's chief, former police officer, Mr. Chan Santoki, is expected to become the next president, as you can see on the screen. Now, Bartese, who won the democratic elections a decade ago, has suffered from an economic crisis and from a 2019 conviction for the murder of political opponents of the military government he led from 1980 to 1987. And Kyla, I remember Ron and I covering this story. It was very interesting to see that someone who was facing a murder conviction basically passed in laws at the time to make himself immune from the crime. It was just a really crazy story to go over. But he has led the country of Suriname for quite a number of years. And this time around, we see him being voted out after 10 years. Now, the Dutch court, viewers, also convicted him in the absentia of drug trafficking, which he also denies. He has remained free in part because he holds the presidency and he is appealing the murder conviction. Now, Bartese has been largely invincible since Monday, though the leader of one of the opposition coalition parties said the president had contacted him in an attempt to get him to switch sides. Now, Bartese's party has also demanded a recount in some areas. So, Kyla, we see big wins here for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis as well as Suriname, respectively. I'm sure it was no easy task to carry out an electoral process in the middle of a pandemic.
I can imagine.
But nevertheless, we see both of these countries really pushing through. So hearty congratulations are in order for both countries.
Most definitely. But Javon, before we close out, we want to remind farmers and fisher folks. Now, registration forms for the economic stimulus for farmers and fisher folks are now available online. You know, farmers which are in need of assistance to cut roads to their properties, fencing of properties, or fisher folks who are in need of engines, nets, equipment, and other measures that will boost their food production should apply for this assistance. There are some qualifying factors, of course, so interested persons can receive more information at the government's website at bvi.gov.vg. Applicants can apply from June 5th to July 3rd. Completed application forms must be submitted with proof of status, estimate of materials, works to be done, or equipment required with photos where possible and a copy of trade license or fishing license or a notarized letter verifying engagement in farming or fishing for the past 3 years. Javon, exciting stuff for the farming and fishing community. Definitely something I know they have been waiting on. So,
And I really hope that they go push for it now because the time is now. Viewers, we are out of time for today. That is it for our news roundup. But be sure to follow us for daily updates via 284media.com. We're also on Facebook at 284media and Instagram and Twitter as well. 284BVI. My name is Javon Wilson.
And I am Kyla Kenisha Forbes. Of course, we'll see you again tomorrow for daily updates of local, regional, and international content. Of course, we are 284 News right here on 284 Media. Have a happy Monday, everybody.